Bienvenue. Welcome once again to another Cladding Matters. Has it been that many? Oh my God, it has. And I think we're trying to make our point, and I think we're starting to be heard. The quality of the people coming on the show is improving. And may I introduce to you all, of course, Hamish McClare of Search Convey, Steve Day of buildingsafetyscheme.org, and special guest, Melissa White, the founder of Kind Stay. And as is usual on this channel, I'm throwing Hamish McClay firmly under the bus.
The topic this week, which eludes me because I haven't got it up on my screen here. Somebody tell me what's the title of
today's topic is between evacuation and restoration.
Right, I felt that was important because we have a very interesting opportunity today. One of the tragedies, of course, of the situation that we speak of week after week after week, and it's ostensibly on cladding, although building safety is an important aspect to this. We speak about the physical appearance that many of us see outside, the facade of some of these buildings that have all this cladding on. However, what it doesn't actually show and what it doesn't demonstrate is the health, the mental health of the people who are actually inside these particular buildings, behind the particular cladding. And today, with that particular sort of topic, we've got an interesting scenario, because what we have, if you like, Steve, who's captured internally within Royal Artillery Quays, the scaffolding is fast hurtling itself up, or building itself up, I should say, the exterior of his particular sort of building, before he shrouded him for about 18 months. Melissa, on the other hand, has been thrown out of her building whilst remediation takes place. And of course, remediation hasn't quite started at Steve's because they're just still in the throes of putting the scaffolding up. So this is the interesting today. So we have two situations of going on. Both Melissa and Steve can explain to us the challenges which they're facing and the hideous nature of what happens within remediation, particularly in view of the fact that remediation is very rarely full remediation. There's very little chance of all of the fire risk being removed, and therefore, if you like, normality returning, because the insurance companies and we had something earlier this week, the mortgage providers are very dubious about the standards that this remediation is reaching. So those that haven't been remediated yet are in for a struggle. Those that have been remediated, they're still in an unsafe building, paying all of this money. And unfortunately, Steve and Melissa are currently trapped, almost with nowhere to go.
Well, having painted a bleak picture, Melissa White, very, very great welcome to the show. Would you kindly tell us your story, please?
Sure. So thank you for having me. So basically, we were given notice of an evacuation about 3 months or 3.5 months ago now. And we were evacuated on the 7th of July, but ours isn't about cladding. Initially, the block next to us, it was about cladding. All the structures were going up and they started doing work, but ours has structural issues that there's an issue with the fireproofing of the steel structure of our building, which is why we've had to evacuate. So my understanding is that a lot of the evacuations have to do with the fireproofing of the structure rather than just the cladding on the outside.
Melissa, initially this channel was focused on cladding, but really what it's morphed into is the overall concern about fire safety. So this falls completely under that remit. Does that mean that effectively the block in which you were originally living in was in fact structurally unsafe and therefore a fire risk, and hence not really livable by humankind?
Well, so I didn't realize that there are 3 ways that steel used in steel frames were supposed to be fireproofed, and all of the buildings that were built by the developer in our marina were not. And so, technically, I believe that that is considered very dangerous for people to be living in.
I think that the metric here is if there was a fire, would it have caused danger to life and limb?
I'm not an expert, so I can't say, but I'm guessing we were moved out because the answer to that is yes.
Well, I'm guessing that if on the occurrence of a fire, that suddenly there would have been outbursts of roses and blooms, then you probably wouldn't have been moved out. I'm suspecting that there was some sort of danger. Thank you so much, and lovely and welcome to the show, Steve. It seems to me that, as I said, this show is not just about cladding and that, but also what pain it hides underneath it and the health effects thereon.
Well, so we've had Matt Hodges long on in the past, and I know Melissa knows Matt well, and has been on podcasts with him too. And he's got a very, very helpful record of all the forced evacuations, and it breaks it down into fire and structural defects. And these defects are so serious that they're forcing you to leave your home. So what is the number? Well, the estimate so far now is 14,495 people have been forcefully evacuated from their homes due to fire safety and structural defects. Now, that is a massive worry to those that haven't been decanted. And I mean, here at Royal Artillery Quays, if they find any structural issues on load-bearing walls when they rip the cladding off, we could find ourselves in that situation. And I think if the Olympic Park has had £432 million worth of internal defects found, that wasn't in the initial scope of the remediation, I think that speaks for itself too. We could be sitting on a complete bomb. And that's why I think, it's great to have Melissa on, because she's actually realised this. And she's actually put together KindStay and founded it. And this is basically looking at the people and the impact it has on them and the support. And I think, Melissa, it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about KindStay and what your vision is and how you might roll this out to help this terrible kind of situation where we've nearly had 15,000 people forcefully evacuated, and we may have a lot more.
Melissa, do tell us about KindStay and how it potentially can help people in those really horrendous circumstances.
Thank you. Well, so before KindStay, I've been supporting leaseholders anyway, and I have been aware of when there is cladding already up, and I have seen men working outside apartments and banging away and the noise. So just to be clear, all of our buildings have cladding issues and did not pass their EWS1, and therefore also couldn't sell. There are just a ton of problems wrong with them. And then service charges, though, were still incredibly high. And so they were paying for these buildings that they couldn't really live in comfortably or happily. And I've seen so 9 out of 10 leaseholders, when I started leaseholders a few years ago because of my grandparents who were just paying £8,000 in service charges a year that went up to £16,000, and they didn't know where the money was going. Through our research, we found that 9 out of 10 leaseholders suffer from a decline in their mental well-being because of their leasehold issues. People have contemplated physical harm and suicide because of the lack of control that they have. So I've seen this and heard about it for some time now. And during this process, when everybody was moving, promising us the world and wanting to move us out, I just I mean, I've been across mindset management and well-being over the last couple of years and have met exceptional professionals, and I just thought it was incredibly negligent to not be thinking about the well-being of the residents that were having to be moved out of their home and into these subpar accommodation apartments that were being provided at a premium price. And I just thought, yeah, and it was just born from that.
It seems to me that you're not really being treated like people who have been wronged, or more like being treated like an inconvenience.
So not one person has contacted anyone, from what I understand, just to see if we're okay. And there are people who have elderly parents they're looking after, or who have physical or mental disabilities that they need to cater for. There's like a whole host. So I feel like I'm pretty privileged in terms of the fact that I'm able to move quite easily. I have moved quite easily. And I have moved many times in the past, but your home is where you're supposed to feel comfort and security.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't say it would even be that we were like an inconvenience. I feel like that it was like we were a piece of furniture that needed to be moved out. It was neutral. They didn't feel great. There was just no kind of
Compassion.
expression. There wasn't any expression of compassion or I guess true care for the residents that were being disrupted.
Right. And a degree of care, Steve, is really what was absent in at least one of the members of Royal Artillery Keys, and it caused them to exit this world. It's that lack of care and support that really is quite astounding, considering it's not your fault. And more importantly, we can literally point the finger of blame when we know whose fault it is.
Yeah, no, that was Amanda wasn't in Royal Artillery Keys, Gareth. It was.
I'm so sorry.
It was over in Clapham, but yeah, no.
Would you say Amanda was the result of a lack of care and support and compassion and emotional intelligence?
Yeah. Amanda was faced with the shocking situation of being made liable by the government via exclusions in the Building Safety Act clauses, so that her class of leaseholder that had bought the freehold and was in a right to manage, she was then excluded because she bought the franchise and hit the Schedule 8 exclusions for the enfranchised leaseholders, which meant she was fully liable for non-cladding costs. So she was very, very distressed. She couldn't talk about anything other than that. And she obviously had to go to a mental hospital. And then she, we don't know 100% what happened, but she was dead a few weeks after. And, she was absolutely plagued with being abandoned, being told no information, no support. So this is what I mean. I personally lost a campaigner in the House of Lords and a very good friend because there's no support. And in Royal Artillery Keys, yes, we haven't had anything like that, but we have had people try to take their own lives. And I've had people, that it's not a rich area. Our insurance is huge. The builders want to leave flammable material on our homes after the remediation. So
right, the SPS cladding, the SPS panels.
Yes, on the fire stairs. So that means we're going to go through 2 years of hell and still have the same insurance costs that we had before, and that's appalling. And also the internals. There's because of the council saying that all our defect evidence doesn't exist. That puts us in a weak position now legally. So we are going to try and do something about this, but at the end of the day.
Yeah, but don't we have black and white recording of them stating that there was issues.
Yeah, we had all that. But as we're focusing on the mental health and Melissa's work, you know, a lot of players in this have contributed to extra stress, extra pain, and not everyone can hack it. And
well, let me just pass back to Melissa. You were on the crux of jumping in there with something. I'm so sorry, but Steve was.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. That's a really important point, that you shouldn't be getting more stress. And I would have to say that there are organizations in our specific situation that has contributed far more stress because of the difficult way that they've made
Right.
everything appear. But one thing that came to mind when Steve was talking about it, so just to be clear, Kind State isn't focusing on clinical mental health support. What we want to do is really help shift the mindset and the confidence of the residents, so that we know that the situation that they're in is really difficult, very frustrating, but a more important component is, what can they do to take control of their daily lives so that they don't feel helpless. And also, the more that you focus on the problem, the worse you're going to feel. So it's also about giving them tools and resources, getting them out of the house, going to the gym, really encouraging a holistic style of well-being that, let's be honest, all of us need, but very few of us really learn about. And I think that I want to bring this to the housing industry, because for me it's an industry that I'm passionate about. I believe that residents in their home, the very basic thing is that they feel safe and secure, and with as little anxiety and stress as possible. There's enough stress in the world to worry about, rather than, you know, what goes on and when you get into the comfort of your home.
And Hamish, I've always heard the expression "the safer houses," and it seems less and less to be true. But I know that you personally are very passionate about finding a way of helping more people see that there are holistic methods of improving one's health, both mental and physical.
I mean, there's two sides to it. There's and Melissa's put it sort of very well, and Steve, the focus this week has largely been on the mindset of people, and that mindset is created, and we can see it throughout society. We're living at a time where basically so many impositions are being created, and there's an expectation, and I think this was demonstrated during lockdown. There's an expectation that, oh, we can do this, and you basically have to put up with what we have chosen to actually do. And it's almost like, and many people feel this, which is why we've got so many people reacting within society, not just about the issues that we're speaking about, but they're reacting against the imposition of the government, who are actually turning around and saying, we're going to put more loads up on you, we're putting this on you, we're increasing taxation. There's so many things going on. People have said, enough's enough. And just something is, I would say, something as simple and straightforward as putting a Union Jack up is deemed to be something which is something malicious within society. Now, how can that actually sort of be? But there's so much being imposed upon people. And if we watch this space, I think it's important that we do set up another podcast, and we can call it Health Matters. We could call it Mindset Matters. It doesn't matter what we call it, but it needs to be, there needs to be something in place there. But what we are going to be speaking about this sort of coming week, it's well worth sort of people looking into. We're looking more at safety within, to try and reassure people what they can do and what actually is being done in the background. But we're in a tough position, because health matters. And whatever happens about our home where we're meant to be safe, there are other health issues that we have to undergo, that we have to go through. And if you add on top of it the situation that Melissa, I mean, it's incredible you have that strength, Melissa, to be able to just almost sort of bounce it off and say, well, you can actually do it. But I think we all need to be able to develop a kind of mindset saying that's what it is. What can we do about improving it for everybody? And we can join in and we can actually sort of share the fact that whatever goes on outside, we don't have to be like that inside. And it's a tough, tough battle to actually sort of do that. And I mean, I've been through, they're almost pathetic issues compared to the likes of what Steve and Melissa have gone through. Mine are mostly sort of health orientated. So purely from that particular sort of side, my home, I'm safe in. I don't have that, but I do have this societal imposition. I say societal, it's very political. It's politicized sort of worldwide, and where Melissa's sort of home country, New Zealand, has had its challenges. In fact, Australia has its challenges. It's quite interesting. We're having somebody from Australia speaking next week, so on cladding matters. So there's a lot going on around us where the impositions are. And the strange thing is, these issues that we've got with the buildings are not restricted to this country either. No. So we've got the political agenda and the politicians, whether it be local politicians, and this will be the subject of another podcast that we want to look into in another couple of weeks, the serious nature of the imposition, particularly of local councils, on the residents of these properties. And won't mind naming and shaming them, because we can actually explain with certain councils where this has happened. So what we've got is a combination of so many sad things which are being imposed upon us. However, if we can create that inner strength and help people to raise that inner strength within themselves to turn around and say, what the heck? I'm inside, I'm fine. What I want to do is make sure that we can do something to help everybody else to feel the same way.
Oh, please, Melissa, please go in.
Yeah, I just want to credit, there are organizations that have been reaching out, and they are facing, that have been tasked with decants or remediation. And it's not necessarily that people haven't wanted to look after residents' well-being. It's just that's not on the project list of what they need to do. And so who does it? And, who is qualified to look after the residents or to communicate with them in a way that, a lot of them don't necessarily have the best relationships with their existing managing agents. It's a little bit more complicated. However, I have to credit the organizations that are coming forward and who are saying, listen, we have this problem. Can you help us, design what should we be doing with these residents, and how can we make it as, it's never going to be positive, but how can we make it like minimize the disruption, minimize the negative effects that it's going to have on them? And I have to really applaud those organizations, because it's brave to acknowledge that you haven't necessarily been doing it right.
Would you like to name check a couple?
Oh, well, we haven't formalized anything yet, so no, I won't.
Can I just add one thing, which is seriously important, this? In the situation that Steve finds himself in, he is not the only council where this actually happens. But the elections sort of came up. There was a by-election that came up because of the local representative for Steve's area within that sort of council. He had actually moved, so there needed to be a replacement sort of come forward. Now, basically Labour have got an awful lot of money, so basically the Labour Council themselves got in touch with the head office, and they parachuted a particular councillor in to look after the residents of that area where Steve is. Now, and this is something that reinforces what Melissa was sort of saying earlier, not a single effort has been made by this parachuted in councillor to make any effort to speak to people within the Royal Artillery Keys. And that was approaching, I can't remember, we're approaching a year now when that happened. And when you actually sort of think the council, one would have thought, does have within them, I would have they should have some consideration for the residents. After all, they are paying for them to attend meetings and represent them at these meetings. They're getting paid to represent their residents, but they're not doing anything on behalf of their residents. That is bloody disgusting. And it continues, and it's not just Steve that suffers from it, there's a lot of other people. And that is a very, very negative attitude that could be resolved so very easily. Just by even picking up a phone, they could pick up a phone. Steve represents 1,000 residents. Mr. Day, what can we do? How are things going with you? How are the residents feeling about it? No, that isn't happening. That isn't happening.
Well, they did. They put letters through the doors, of course, of everyone.
They love putting letters through the doors, don't they?
How wrong the residence chair was about all the evidence of all the defects. So I think they can communicate. It's just what they communicate that's the problem. But just to give a positive note.
I do love a positive note. Come on, Steve.
So next week, on the 14th in Parliament, I'm meeting in Portcullis House with Matt Hodges-Long, Jeff Wilkinson, hopefully Baroness Pinnock, Gideon Amos and his policy team, the Earl of Lytton, and David Sawtell, who's a Grenfell Inquiry construction council lawyer who really knows about the legislative impacts of the Building Safety Act. And of course, my policy team, which is hidden away, which will never be known, have developed, now we've finished the work. So we've got the policy amendments to actually remove the 1.7 million exclusions in the Building Safety Act by amending Schedule 8 of the Building Safety Act to remove the exclusions. So anyone that's enfranchised in an RTM, in an RMC, are protected. Anyone in an 11-meter block or below is protected. Anyone that's bought more than 3 properties is protected. Anyone that has had a partial remediation will have it done fully, using the building safety risk definition rather than the PAS 9980 watered down, leave it all on standard. And a few other things. We're even going to be dealing with adoption because we think roads that the residents are having to pay for, which kills RMCs, common hold and all the rest of it. We're going to be dealing with adoption because why shouldn't the council adopt all these roads and open spaces and sewers? We found sewers, residents paying for sewers. Unbelievable. So we're going to be dealing with all of that stuff as well, forcing the local authorities to adopt sewers, open spaces and roads if a builder wants to build in those local authorities across the country, across the jurisdiction of the UK. And that's all coming to the House of Lords in a planning and infrastructure bill near you in 2 weeks' time. So look out for that. The debates will be on Parliament TV.
Well, let me thank everyone for watching this one. I think it's particularly interesting. And we continue the Antipodean flavour next Friday with the ex-Premier of Victoria, who is going to come on board. We're running the show, I think, slightly early in the day. It will be about 10 o'clock. Do please switch your reminders till then, because I know a lot of you do watch it compulsively, which is all to the good. Thank you so much, Melissa White, for taking the time out of your busy day to be with us. Of course, Steve Day of Building Safety Scheme, our Lord and Master Hamish McClay, and myself, Gareth Wax of the Many Hats. I just wanted to thank all of you for watching. Please try and keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. And please look after that mental health. Until next week, goodbye.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll polish you the moon, but their word